In 2013, Russian photographer Georgy Sidorov discovered a colossal megalith in a remote wilderness area in Siberia. During an expedition in the foothills of Mount Shoria near Altai, Sidorov came upon a great wall of granite blocks. What made his discovery unusual was that these gargantuan stones had flat surfaces, right angles, and sharp corners, reminiscent of Cyclopean masonry.
The thing is that nature does not happen to see straight angles. All blocks are built like in a brick wall. All of them have straight angles like a castle. There are thousands of clues that say this formation is built by a form of intelligence.
The beauty and precision of this 130-foot structure has left archaeologists with no explanation for how such an arrangement could have formed naturally. Geologists have estimated that the largest blocks of granite at Mount Shoria weigh 3,000 to 4,000 tons. Before this, the pregnant woman stone of Baalbek, weighing 1,500 tons, was the largest single stone used in an ancient site.
You have these beautiful polygonal walls, perfect straight lines and perfect right angles. You have these massive blocks of granite that look like this. Someone's taken a big diamond drill and sawed them right down the middle. On granite, that took effort. The Russian scientists that went there, they discovered some things which cannot be explained by nature, which are these beautiful round, almost pot surfaces where they've taken a drill and they've formed a perfect depression. And they also have these perfect tunnels and these doorways that seem to be very deliberately put there. So maybe what we're doing here is taking an entire mountain that's been completely shaped by human hands.
The megalithic structure discovered in the Altai Mountains near the Denisovan cave harkens really to structures like Baalbek in Lebanon, these Cyclopean megalithic structures that are hundreds of tons in weight. Stones so large that even our best equipment today could not possibly even come close to lifting them. And that they were using a type of science and mathematical understanding that just wasn't available to our ancient ancestors.
If Georgy Sidorov's discovery is real, could it be evidence that remote Siberia was once home to an advanced civilization? Near this discovery of the megalithic wall, scientists believe they have found bones from a new species. Could these places be linked? In 2008, archaeologists made world headlines when they unearthed a Paleolithic finger bone from a juvenile female estimated to be 41,000 years old. Further DNA analysis indicated the finger was from a previously unknown and extinct homonym subspecies. These previously unknown ancestors were christened with the name Denisovan.
The Denisovans are probably the most exciting discovery in the origins of humanity for decades. I mean, arguably even in the last 100 years. Because we're talking about a previously unknown, let's say, human population who are different to the Neanderthals. They're different to anatomical modern humans. The Denisovans occupied large areas of central, southern and eastern Asia for anything up to 200,000 years. They've told us, for instance, that many modern-day human populations in the eastern part of the Eurasian continent have the DNA which has been inherited from the Denisovans in a similar manner to how the people of the western Eurasian continent have DNA within them of the Neanderthals. They were of extreme size, not just broad, but of extreme height, perhaps even as much as 7 feet tall. But the DNA from these fossil remains have told us so much.
It has archaeologists coming up in rashes because suddenly we have here another human species that's completely forgotten.
But who was this forgotten species? And how could their destiny on the planet be linked with ours?
Firstly, we know that a further tooth that was found in the Denisova cave, but they didn't really know too much about it, has now been confirmed to be that of a Denisovan woman. It's about 125,000 years old. And this confirms that the Denisovans were in this area for a much longer period than had initially been suggested. And that's many, many generations. That means that they were an incredibly developed population.
You go back before 200,000 years, and in many areas at that time, our species was coexisting with other human species who were human enough for us to interbreed with them. For example, the Neanderthals. For example, the recently discovered Denisovans. Both of these human species who are not anatomically modern humans have left traces in our anatomically modern human DNA. We have to ask, if we're talking of records going back hundreds of thousands of years, is it possible that these other human species reached a high level of development during their tenure of life on Earth? Is it possible that they were advanced in some way?
Artifacts found in recent archaeological digs at the cave suggest that the Denisovans were not only large, but highly intelligent. Some scientists, like Jack Carey, believe they had the ability to create sophisticated technology.
The Denisovans had to be much more advanced than what they're being credited with. I say that because of the discovery of a piece of jewelry that they found in the original Denisovan cave that dated 40,000 years ago. It was made of a green polished rock, and anthropologists believe that this jewelry was only worn on very special occasions. That indicates a culture. It indicates art. It indicates a higher understanding of reality. These aren't people that were simply clubbing animals to death and using their furs. These were people that were literally constructing jewelry. That's something a lot of anthropologists are uneasy with, because it shows a depth of understanding and beauty in their culture that really shouldn't have existed with such ancient hominids.
The archaeologists kept digging a bit more, as they tend to do, and they found that when they got to a layer that's about 380,000 years, they found tools there, they found a needle, they found certain artifacts that looks like bracelets and other ornaments, and they also found a ring which has been beautifully shaped out of rock. It has been obviously machined and polished.
Beautiful bone needles have been found in the Denisova cave, suggesting that the Denisovans wore tailored clothing. Horse DNA has also been found inside the cave itself, suggesting that the Denisovans not only hunted horses, but probably domesticated them and may even have ridden horses. And this is probably tens of thousands of years before it was even thought possible that you could ride horses, something that was considered conventionally to only have occurred in Bronze Age times. And yet here we have people 40 to 50,000 years ago who were riding horses, domesticating them, catching them.
If this scientific data is true, then how could these ancient ancestors shed new light on our evolution? Perhaps it's possible that they not only date back hundreds of thousands of years earlier than we had thought, but to another world entirely. A world where a certain species survived among these evolved creatures.
When you're reading in a book and you see HOMOSAPIENS, that's Homo sapien, it's my understanding Homo sapien is the word for the large group of standing up primates that have started an evolutionary trail from Lucy in Africa about 2 million years ago. But within Homo sapien, there are a whole bunch of models that have included a Neanderthalensis and now Cro-Magnon Homo sapien sapien.
Andrew Collins has been monitoring the movement of this ancient giant human species and has a different theory.
we can say almost certainly is that because our ancestors interbred with them, that there were hybrids of Denisovans and Homo sapiens that continued their traditions for tens of thousands of years, evolving these ideas and then spreading them into other parts of the Eurasian continent and also into the Americas.
If you go further south to the area around Sumeria, the area around the Black Sea, and to a place where we have some information from, which is the Scythian culture, which not many people talk about, they also were supposed to be claimed to have been older than the Egyptians, and part of their culture wasn't just humanoid, they were also a godly culture, and they were also described as being very tall, almost like giants, again, sometimes with an elongated skull, and they're supposed to be wisdom keepers.
Here is what I think happened. Possibly somewhere in the Altai mountains of southern Siberia around 45,000 years ago. At this time, the area was occupied by the Denisovans. Let's assume that they were extremely tall, very well built. If you can imagine the biggest Russian wrestlers that you can think of, and then cover them in furs and give them wisdom of 200,000 years. That's what we're talking about here. If you can imagine that their race is probably dying out. In other words, their population may not have been so large as it once was, and yet they have this incredible knowledge, this incredible wisdom now. And they get to hear about these new people arriving out of the direction of the setting sun. They're much smaller, they look different, their skin may be slightly different colour, and they know that they're gradually moving eastwards, they're gradually taking over one territory and then the next. They would exploit the resources and just move on. And then one day, these people turn up and there's a first encounter between our own ancestors, Homo sapiens, and the Denisovans. I think if I was a Denisovan at this point, I would be saying, I think our time's up and we have to change our ways. And one of the possibilities is that there was an understanding between the new people and the Denisovans that this ancient wisdom, this ancient knowledge would now be carried into the new world through hybrid descendants. In other words, we would interbreed, and it would be through our descendants, our hybrid descendants, that this ancient wisdom would now be disseminated.
Could this be true? The Siberian fossil remains found in Altai have challenged scientists to re-examine the transformation of human DNA.